super. Hello, friends, and welcome to the first Christian Friends of EMUNAH webinar in 2026. We are so glad you are all here and appreciate you being with us. Lots to cover, and of course, as we are aware of everything that is going on globally, there is never a lack of content for which we can engage and talk about with you all, and not least new declarations of new countries and various other things that are kind of going on. So let's just kind of touch on a few of those just briefly. And of course, we've seen the play out in Venezuela as well. But if we look at what's taken place in Israel, there is still, firstly, and we must remember at the start of this year, there is still one hostage remaining, and that is why we are still at phase one, although there have been attempts and talks of phase two of bringing in different military forces to stabilize, quote unquote, the Gaza region. In the interim, there have been and continue to be skirmishes between Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and the likes around, and of course Iran, the rumblings and everything that's going on there. But Israel has struck in Lebanon a number of different times in the recent, even namely yesterday and this morning. Israeli conducted air and military strikes against Hezbollah and alleged militant targets in southern and eastern Lebanon, including in Sidon, which, of course, if you know your Bible, Sidon is a place that is mentioned in the scriptures. And so tensions remain high there, and these operations do reflect the ongoing, continuing Israeli-Hezbollah conflict, which has continued since October 2023 with rocket fire and exchanges. In other kind of technical news, and it's a smaller detail, but it's one that's worth noting, is that most of you that are using your phones will be on 5G, the network system. Well, for those in the Palestinian territories, quote unquote, they have just been approved for 4G mobile services in the West Bank. So they're obviously a stage behind. Some places, and including Gaza, have been at 2G and 3G. So it's their infrastructure is being increased, and that's obviously a decision with implications for Palestinian mobility and connectivity. And that is one of the reasons why they've been playing out. And then we can also turn our attention to Somaliland and what's been going on in Somaliland, and the recognition that Israel has given to Somaliland, which is, of course, maybe a new piece of information for you. You've got, of course, Somalia and Somaliland. We had a number of years ago, we had South Sudan was recognized as a stepway. Now, that is really quite strategic on a whole number of levels. The Israeli's foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, visited Somaliland following Israel's recognition of the breakaway region, which has, of course, angered Somalia, and has ramifications for the shifting alliances in the Horn of Africa. It's very, very strategic, of course, with what's been going on with Yemen and the Houthis and the rockets being fired there, and Somalia and that whole region. And it appears that this is a strategy that Israel is engaging with, in recognizing that these ties could influence broader African geopolitical alignments and raise tensions between Israel and other regional powers that are opposed to Somaliland's independence. Much like South Sudan, there was, of course, a big initial turmoil on that, and we have to understand that that's driven by theology, because with Somalia is, of course, majority Islamic, and any place that has been owned by Islam is seen as theirs perpetually. And so the ramifications of that is, when it's no longer governed by an Islamic power, it becomes something that is an affront to Islamic theology. So that's one of the reasons why Israel being back in the land is an affront to the whole Islamic world, because for a short season, relatively speaking, in the grand scheme of things, the Ottomans ruled over the territory of Israel, and therefore that is their claim to that land. So we have to understand the theology that drives the ideology that brings about the reality and what's taking place. Now, if we move across internationally to what took place in Venezuela, those of you that have been keeping in tune with this, now there are all sorts of major kind of geopolitical, and has this crossed a line with regard to whether nations should infringe. What we do know is it wasn't a killing of another nation's leader. It was a recognition of what that leader has been involved in. and the swearing in ceremony of the deputy for the time being there, the three key diplomats that were at that were Iran, Russia, and China, which should tell you all you need to know with regard to the allegiance of Venezuela as a whole. They have been pumping in. Somebody said that there is a 100,000 overdoses of fentanyl, and that predominantly has come from Venezuela, which is a drug that is destructive and devastating. Now, just this weekend, our pastor was with we got to speak to a Venezuelan pastor in real time on Saturday night, and that pastor stated, thank you for what your leader has done for our nation. Maybe this will give us an opportunity to share the gospel freely, and that is the key component. Regime change is nothing in and of itself if it doesn't afford the opportunity for the good news to be shared with those in those nations, and so that's what we want to encourage in Venezuela and encourage as we see these regime change that where there has been tyrannical leadership, for that to be removed for the opportunity of the good news to go forward is very, very important. The other kind of big piece of news is that, of course, Israel was open for business and has been doing very well practically in that regard, and a lot of tourism has increased as a result. And I also want to share about something that you're probably not aware of, which is an app in Israel called Shikum. And Shikum is the means through which those that are it's run by the rehabilitation division of the Israeli Ministry of Defense, and it's an app that's been launched that is supposed to simplify the access to alternative therapies and sports activities for injured individuals coping with PTSD. And PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. I say this quite often. I don't think we're in a situation where it's post-traumatic stress. I think it's present-day stress, traumatic stress disorder. It's something that is an ongoing reality. It's not something, I mean, you imagine for 2 years having to run to bomb shelters multiple times a night and day, and the consequences of that on mental health and head injuries and all sorts of things. So eligible patients in Israel can use their 6,000 shekel annual treatment entitlement through a digital wallet in the app, and the payments are made directly to therapists and sports centers via the mobile phone without upfront payment, receipt submission, or reimbursement waiting periods. And that service is operating through a nationwide network of more than 5,000 providers. Shikum.me includes therapy such as acupuncture, massage, yoga, music therapy, along with sports and outdoor activities, including gyms, surfing, sailing, and running groups. And users can view provider availability in their areas, see their remaining balance in real time. And from this month, they're going to receive 72,000 digital coins in the app, which is equivalent to 6,000 shekels annually. So those patients whose current therapists join the platform will continue receiving the same treatment at the same prices, and there's a 3-month transition period during which patients are able to submit receipts for complementary treatments while completing the shift to the app. So a lot of change there, and then of course the uprisings within Iran, is that going to result in regime change? Well, the Bible does talk about Elam and talks about everything that's going on there. If you haven't looked at Elam, it's worth doing so in Scripture. These are global affairs that tell us that the Bible is more relevant than tomorrow's newspaper. And so we watch each and every day with what's going on. And we've got a very special guest as we launch this year with and their whole ministry's mandate is found in Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40, verse 1 through 11, and it will be familiar to many of you. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God.
Nice.
Speak tenderly
Mm,
to Jerusalem and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all people will see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. A
mm,
voice says, cry out. And I said, what shall I cry? All people are like grass, and all their faithfulness is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers, the flower fails, but the word of our God endures forever. You who bring good news to Zion, go on up a high mountain. You who bring good news to Jerusalem, Lift up your voice with a shout. Lift it up. Do not be afraid. Say to the towns of Judah, here is your God. See, the sovereign Lord comes with power, and he rules with a mighty arm. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. And that's Isaiah 40, verse 1 through 11. If you're familiar with the work of the ICEJ, the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, we will be speaking with the US director in just a few moments.
This short 2-minute video about a story of a young lady that grew up in one of the EMUNAH homes has English subtitles. It's 2 minutes long.
עליתי לארץ בגיל 6 בשנת 91 עם ההורים ושמונת האחים שלי. ההורים שלי שהגיעו לארץ ישראל אז הם חוו את משבר ההגירה, וככה המצב בבית התחיל להידרדר. מהשמחה הגדולה שהגענו לארץ זה כבר נהיה עצב נורא גדול בבית. אמא חלתה, וכשאבא לא מצא עבודה אז גם האלימות התחילה בבית. היית צריך להסתפק במועט, אין דבר כזה לבקש, תסתדרו. זה בעיקר מה ששמענו. באיזשהו שלב הרווחה החליטה להתערב ולשלוח אותנו לפנימיות, ואותי ואת אחי שגדול ממני בשנתיים שלחו לאחוזת צרה. אני זוכרת את הלילה הראשון שלי, לא הפסקתי לבכות, ואז הגיעה יהודית, המדריכה שלי, שאני איתה בקשר עד היום. היא באה והיא הייתה איתי, היא חיבקה אותי, היא נשקה אותי, וכל הלילה בכיתי. אני זוכרת שאמרתי לה, לא יהיה מספיק טישו. אבל היא הייתה איתי עד הבוקר. בעלות השחר היא אמרה לי, בואי נראה את השמש עולה. ומה זה הטוב הזה בכלל? אני לא רגילה. כאילו, בתור ילדה קטנה כבר ידעתי שמצאתי את המקום שלי. פה למדתי לאהוב, למדתי לפתוח את הלב. באמת קיבלתי ארגז כלים לחיים. בגיל 20 התחתנתי עם בעלי אורן, ויש לנו 2 ילדים, רם ואלמה, ילדים מדהימים. התחתנתי נורא מוקדם, כי רציתי בית. רציתי להקים משהו שלא היה לי, ואני יודעת שלאחוזת צרה יש הרבה בבית שבניתי. אין לי מילים אפילו כדי להודות ולהסביר כמה זה השפיע עליי, אבל זה השפיע.
We will get the link into the chat if that's something you want to listen to later. If you're learning Hebrew, you might enjoy hearing her tell a little bit of her story in Hebrew. Steve and I had the privilege of visiting that exact EMUNAH Children's Home back in November, and it is a beautiful place doing amazing work. And we're really excited to announce, hopefully it'll be ready by next week, but there is going to be a new program we're launching in 2026 where it's possible for the Christian Friends of EMUNAH to help to sponsor a specific child that's living in the Achuzat Sarah home to help make it possible to get them a birthday present and shoes and clothes and help sponsor the education and the therapies that they are receiving there. We're really excited about this. It's going to be a $40 a month commitment, and you're going to be connected with a specific child in that home and be able to make a tangible difference in them. The details are coming out soon, but you're going to get some information about them and their birthday and the opportunity to send them a letter twice a year through the EMUNAH program. So I'm really excited about that. If that's something you're interested in, feel free to get in touch with us and we'll make sure that we get you that information as soon as it's ready, hopefully by next week. And you can either write us at christianfriends@emunah.org or ruth@emunah.org. I'm playing on the name. I'll make sure we get the right email address in the chat there. So that is something really exciting coming up. EMUNAH is doing such important work with Israel's most vulnerable children and families. And there are children that actually live in the EMUNAH homes. And then there's children that the homes are supporting, trying to make it possible for them to stay with their parents, but providing after school care for them and support and parent classes and drug and alcohol rehabilitation for the families. So it's really all around preventative care, and then also care for children that have been removed through court order because of severe neglect or abuse or abandonment or possibly being orphaned. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for that. If you're not already on the EMUNAH email list, I definitely encourage you to join that. We provide monthly prayer points where you can have some direction and how to pray for the children and the families of Israel, and as well as the nation as a whole and the military and political things going on there as well. So definitely make sure you sign up for that if you're not already receiving them. And I know we had just before, back in December, just before the new year, we had a special guest from ICEJ Jerusalem, Fine Dictoda, who is heads up the diplomacy work there. And today we have another very special guest from the ICEJ. Susan Michael is the president of the USA branch. Um, and for more than 40 years, she's been a leading voice in Christian education and advocacy, equipping the church to understand the biblical, historical, and modern significance of Israel. Dr. Michael serves as the ICJ's on the ICJ's International Board of Directors, and she leads the American Christian Leaders for Israel Network. She's an accomplished author, educator, and she's the host of the Out of Zion podcast. Under her leadership, the ICEJ USA offers a wide range of educational resources through the ICEJ University, including online courses, books, articles, podcasts, all designed to deepen faith and understanding. So we are so excited to have her with us today and to hear more about these resources that she has available for us. Welcome, Susan.
Hey there, Melissa. It's great to be with you and Stephen and everyone today.
Wonderful, Laura. So glad to have you here with us as well. I know you've been involved with the ICJ, I believe, since 1980 when you were a graduate student in Jerusalem. So how did that experience shape your lifelong commitment to this organization and to Israel?
Yeah, well, Israel completely changed my life. And my first trip was in 78 for a summer study program. I was a college student, and that's really what changed my life. I was a biblical studies major. I loved the Bible. I read the Bible every day. But I got to Israel and it just stood up. It just came alive. You know, it's like it took on flesh and bones. And it was so life changing. And of course, also the world came alive to me because when you're there in Israel, it's like you're in the center of the world and they're so world aware of everything going on all around the world. How does it affect the local Jewish community? How does it affect Israel? And I became world aware. And this was just a radical change for me. So when I finished my bachelor's degree in the United States, I returned to Jerusalem. I wanted more of that experience and learning, and had just arrived in August of 1980 to begin a master's degree at a small Christian school there. And the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem was born 1 month later. At the very first Feast of Tabernacles, they announced I was there at the feast. I was there at the front door of the ICEJ when it opened. And of course, I was a full-time student. I wasn't on staff, but I was in and out of there every week, just like a part of the family. Very involved in prayer, prayed with the staff, prayed with the leadership during that critical first 2 years of birthing of the ministry. And one day we were praying actually for the birthing of the branch in the United States. And they were in talks with someone about it. And it was through that prayer time that the Lord spoke to me, Washington, D.C. And so when I finished my master's degree, I ended up going to DC on behalf of the ICEJ, helped to eventually start the US branch there, and became the head office. So to answer your question, Israel totally changed my life. And only the Lord knew the timing of my arrival there. I had no idea. I was completely clueless, but he knew. And I stepped into a moment in history that was just phenomenal. And I'm so grateful for that. It's been a privilege to be involved in it all these years.
That is beautiful. I love how Israel changed your life, and then in return, the Lord's used you to change so many people's hearts, how they view Israel and how they understand Israel, and helping them understand it from a biblical perspective. I'm sure a lot of people on the call are familiar with ICJ, but just in case we have any new people, can you just give a quick overview of the organization, what you do, what you're about, what the heart is?
So it was founded in 1980 when all the embassies moved out of Jerusalem in protest of it being the capital of Israel. And so these Christians that had organized the very first Feast of Tabernacles seized that moment. And they said, we do not support what our governments have done, and therefore we're starting an international Christian embassy in Jerusalem that represents the millions of Bible-based Christians around the world who stand with Israel at this moment. So that's how we got started. And the name sounds a little political, but actually the ministry has been very biblical from day one. As you said earlier, our ministry verse is Isaiah 40, verse 1. Comfort ye, my people, says the Lord. And we were very aware that after 2,000 years of just terrible relations between Jews and Christians, that we were initiating like a whole new relationship, one built on mutual respect and honor. And so we have been able to pioneer a whole new relationship with Jewish people as a kind of a outgrowth or ramification of our ministry. But the heart of our ministry is to the people of Israel, just representing Christian support to them, delivering that support in very, very practical ways. It could be humanitarian aid, could be housing Holocaust survivors, placing portable bomb shelters in vulnerable communities, helping in times of crises and need. And we've been doing this for 45 years. So we've done some level of assistance in every city in Israel, every people group, every demographic, just to show that we are there because we are Christians. We represent millions around the world that are praying for them and that support them. So with the practical assistance, it's a ministry of real encouragement. The people are so encouraged because many of them do not know about the world of Christian support that's out there for them. And so we always make sure that they know that that's where this is coming from. We quickly started developing representatives and branches in other countries. So we now have a representation in over 90 countries, but the ministry reaches into 183 countries. And the way we know that is because we've been hosting daily prayer meetings for Israel. And through Zoom, you can go in and see who's logged in and participated in their country. And we have had people from 183 countries praying with us every day for Israel. So we have an extensive international outreach where we raise funds for the projects in Israel. But secondly, we are there to educate the Christians in our country. And that's why I've spent a lot of time and effort in building the educational resources that you mentioned.
Wow, that is beautiful. 183 countries. That is astonishing. That made me tear up. It's really exciting what the Lord is doing and how he's moving across the world to pray for what's going on in Israel. But tell us a little bit more about this education piece. How has ICJ's view and goals with education developed over the last few decades and even in the last year or two?
Well, because I'm a teacher at heart, education is very important to me. And the ICJ we always had a first class magazine with articles in it and teaching articles. But right before COVID hit, and it just became so obvious to me, we had to get educational content up on new platforms. We had to be doing podcasting, and we needed to be doing social media, and we needed to be doing courses and books and every platform that we could because not everyone's reading magazines these days. And so I started that. And then during COVID, everything, all the travel shut down, all the meetings. And so I just set up a studio in my home and started recording. And we put the recordings out as a podcast, but I was doing teaching series. So then we were able to take that video content and we turned it into online courses. We took the transcripts, we turned it into books and study guides. And so the goal is to just get a good teaching on Israel and the biblical support for Israel out in all these different formats. And one of the first things that I did in my teaching series, I had read a book by a Christian pastor who actually was promoting that we completely disregard the Old Testament and that it's irrelevant and that what Jesus brought was so new and so different. We didn't need the Old Testament. And I was so appalled. And I realized that so much of our Bible teaching aids, we have great Bible studies out there. We have great Bible teaching available, online, but very little of it addresses the issue of the Jewish people in Israel today. They may talk about the Israelites of the Bible, but make no connection to today. And some of it actually teaches a replacement theology that Israel's irrelevant and has been replaced by the church. So I felt we just need to get some basic Bible aids out there that explains how that the Jewish people and the Christian people are both relevant and how that the Old Testament is so important and the overarching story of the Bible. And so one of my first teaching series was the 3D Bible, how to read the Bible so it comes to life. So we have that up as an online course now. We have it also as a book that we've published, but it started out with those podcast teachings that I talked about. And so we've just been churning out as much content as possible. And now we are entering, I think, phase 2, which is now better promoting and getting that content known. And but we have some great online courses at ICEJ U. Any of your listening audience would be interested in them. It's free of charge. It's for the general public. And we have both biblical studies and we have Israel studies. And in our biblical studies, we have a walk through the Bible in a year program where you can read along in the Bible throughout the year and each week listen to one of the teachings. Yes, there's the biblical studies, and we're putting up just in the next 2 weeks a whole new series called By the Book, and it is an introductory video. Most of them are 1 hour video introduction to every book in the Bible. And so we just wanted to get foundational Bible study tools out there to refute replacement theology. And then in addition, we have the second section called Israel Studies. And that's where we have, yeah, I see they have By the Book up. I don't know if it's fully up, but it's getting up this week. And then under Israel Studies, we have 5 little courses on the history of Israel in the Bible and the history since the Bible, anti-Semitism, Jewish-Christian relations, the birth of Israel, and modern Israeli society. And it's really great teaching. So invite everyone to take advantage of that.
So how do you see, or how are you hearing that people are using these? Who's the ideal audience for them? Is it people that already know about Israel and they want to learn better how to explain to others? Is it for small groups or churches? How would you recommend using all these amazing resources? There's so many
Oh,
of them.
I'd say all of the above, but it's all built so that the individual can go through it easily on their own. But we do have some group study, like a study aid for the 3D Bible we've got, but any of it can be used as a group study as well. We have had, I think, almost 1,000 people take one or more of the courses so far, so we're excited about that. And we also, one other thing that we have is a college level course and it is not up for the public. But we have been investigating how schools can use this and how best to do it. And we do have 2 schools that are interested in using it, but we have found that it's probably going to be best that we put it up online ourselves for a college level course. So with the reading assignments and with the discussion group questions and the quizzes and all of that. And then have an agreement with some of the schools that if they'll let their students know about this and they go through it and get a certificate from us, that the school will award them some level of credit, maybe 1 or 2 credits for the course, for each course. And so we're in the process of ironing that out and getting it set up. We're really excited because the Lord's been opening doors for us with a number of Christian colleges. We've got about 20 right now that we're engaged with, the major ones also. And so as soon as we can get this course ready, we want to start networking it to to those colleges and make it available to the students.
That is such a great idea. It definitely seems like the battleground for the mind, happens on these university campuses, and to have a different message than is typically taught on these campuses is, yeah, just such a great idea and great resource. I'm assuming you get some pushback against some of these things. Is that an issue you're coming up against?
Well, we haven't had so much pushback. I want to say that there's a lot of interest in the schools. And even schools that have been very steeped in replacement theology, there are professors there that are not, and they're wanting to help introduce this kind of teaching into their schools. So we're finding really more reception than I expected. And with the students themselves, I'm really excited because we just hosted a conference in November. We had 300 young Christian leaders. So some of them were still in college, some of them were right out of college, up to the age of 45. And the conference was on combating anti-Semitism. And but these 300 young Christian leaders and emerging leaders, I was so blessed by them because they were so attentive. They had real questions, but they were genuine, heartfelt questions because they hear so much and they don't understand. And they were there to learn. And I left there so encouraged that there are thousands of Christian young people out there with that heart attitude. And we just need to reach them and give them resources and help equip them. And I believe they'll stand up and begin to give more of a response. Right now, they just don't know how to respond, but we need to find them and engage them and equip them to respond.
Absolutely. Do you know what? That doesn't actually surprise me that much. I think that the media and even pro-Palestinian groups can make us want to feel like everybody everybody thinks they're a certain way. And I think it's definitely come out that a lot of these protests on college campuses it's not even students participating in them.
Right.
It's been funded, outside people bust in and paid to be part of these protests. So praise the Lord, that is very encouraging to hear. And I think we should all remember that and jot that down to be praying for these young people, because it's so important to invest in the next generation. And yeah, I think too, not getting frustrated with them for having genuine questions, but having real answers, and teaching that they can turn to understand that this is coming from a biblical perspective, of international law perspective. There's so many reasons why Israel does have a legitimate right to be in the land, and it's an education piece that is on all of us to to pass that on and to educate. Somebody had a comment in the chat here about the curriculum being used for homeschool. I assume that that's another possible use for it.
On the horizon, yes.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, maybe some of the high schoolers could do the college course or some of the other course in the meantime. So I know that the Out of Zion podcast, of which you're the host, that is a big part of the education piece of the ICEJ. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the interviews, some of the people that you've met through this podcast, and maybe some of the the stories or interviews that have been most impactful for you or for the listeners? I know you've talked to so many interesting people.
Well, yeah, as I said, I used it sort of as a teaching tool where I didn't do many interviews until just lately. And but I know people really enjoy listening to interviews, and so we began doing some over the last year or so. But I think the most interesting was within the context of the year-long walk through the Bible, where every week I was teaching from that week's teaching, and I would do interviews and bring people in to talk about some of the archaeological finds that back the stories and this kind of thing. And so when we were dealing with the Exodus, we interviewed, and now, of course, his name has just left my mind.
Tim
But he,
Mahoney.
yes, thank you. He did the Exodus series. It was so fascinating. And to bring, this is what I try to do, is to not just tell people something, I mean, they can take my word for it, but they're not going to. So you need to help connect the dots for them with the history, with how that scripture played out in history, with the context. And then archaeology has become so exciting. And to see how that more and more archaeology is just proving the Bible. An archaeologist will not say that, and they hate to say that because they feel like it lessens their status in the academic world. But really, that's all it's doing. All they're finding these days in Israel is just proving the Bible. It's so exciting. So those kinds of interviews about backing up of the biblical stories that we did. And also, when we got into more of connecting the Bible to today, because a lot of people, they love studying their Bible and they know a lot of Bible, but they do not know how to connect the Bible to today because there's 2,000 years of history that took place in there. And we sort of feel like, well, it all happened then, it's done, it's over with. And my point is, no, the story that began in Genesis, it's still going on today. Just because they stopped writing the history at a certain point, the history has still continued, and it's the history of the children of Israel. Today we call them the Jewish people. It's the same people, and that history has continued. So I did a series called Connecting the Bible to Today, and I talked about the development of Christianity, the development of Judaism, the development of anti-Semitism, and that affected Jewish-Christian relations, and then how that is affected by the birth of Israel today. Because one of the lies that we keep hearing today is that Israel of the Bible has nothing to do with Israel today. And so it's that history that connects the dots to the two. It has everything to do with Israel today. And so we interviewed Rabbi Shmuel Bowman on the Sabbath and how his family observes the Sabbath. And people just absolutely loved hearing from an Orthodox rabbi who has such a love for God and such a love for the scriptures and a love for Christians and appreciation for the Jewish-Christian relationship. That was a real highlight in our interviews. It blessed a lot of people. We love our partnership with Rabbi Bowman. I know you both know
Yeah.
him well, and he was a great blessing.
I love that. I'm definitely going to have to look up that episode now. So, what you just explained about going through the history of Christianity and Judaism, that is available if people look for the Out of Zion podcast on YouTube or different podcast platforms or the
Yes,
website.
it's called Connecting the Bible to Today.
Connecting the Bible. That sounds like a fantastic resource. I know Stephen's putting lots of links in the chat here for people to follow up with. So, the word EMUNAH means faith, faithfulness, turning faith into action. So, how do you encourage people that are maybe taking your courses, they're learning about Israel through the podcast? How do you encourage them to move through learning to real life engagement or real life action?
Well, the first thing we encourage them to do is they must go to Israel. So save every penny you have, pray for God's provision, He'll help you, And you must get there because it is so life-changing. I mean, my story is just one of millions. So many Christians come back saying it just changed their life to see the places, to understand the context of where the Bible took place. And when you're in Israel, you're surrounded also by prophecy fulfilled. And that's when you come to realize how accurate the Bible is. It's not just truth, it's accurate. And what it says happened, you can bet it happened just exactly the way it's described. And so that's the first thing is get to Israel. Then once they have made that trip, you know, it's so important just to take any of these courses. If they haven't read through the Bible before, do the year through walk through the Bible, get that foundation. One of the things that we've seen over the years is that Christians will go to Israel and they get so excited because it was such a wonderful trip for them and life changing just because of the biblical sites. But they come back excited about Israel and they want to support Israel. And one of the things they want to do is perhaps reach out to the local Jewish community, if there is one in their area, or to somehow work with the Jewish people in support of Israel. And that's wonderful. We encourage that. However, if they do not know the history of Christian anti-Semitism, it's almost dangerous for them to begin just reaching out to the local Jewish community. That's why that history is so important. Learn the history. I remember one time speaking in a church, and as often as I can, I bring up the history of Christian anti-Semitism. Why? Because evangelical Christians sitting in the pews do not know about it. They know nothing about it. And I remember running into a woman afterwards in the hallway, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea what I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know." And just astounding history with so many lessons for us to learn from. And the number one lesson is to learn humility as we approach the Jewish people, to understand the horrible mistakes that we made, that Christians made, some in the name of Christianity, and to learn those lessons and to approach that relationship, with humility, like the Apostle Paul said in Romans the 11, to not be arrogant and to not be haughty, and to honor them. And so we try to teach that before they begin to engage the Jewish community. We also, encourage everyone to begin to prepare themselves to speak out against anti-Semitism. That's a very intimidating thing for many people, and it's like later down the road, but that's one of the goals that we have.
Amen. Well, Susan, we're just about out of time here, but we are so grateful for all of that you do. We're thankful for your time. We're thankful that you're making these resources available to us. If you visit ICEJ USA.org, you can find the ICEJ U and Dr. Susan Michael's podcast and lots of other fantastic resources. I know they offer opportunities to visit to Israel, to do service project trips to Israel, just so much. So I highly recommend that you check out their course. And I'm actually so grateful and honored that the ICEJ U has linked my Hebrew course, Explore Hebrew, to the ICEJ University curriculum. Stephen's put the link to that in the chat, and I bring it up because actually next week at the same time and same place, our webinar is going to be a little bit different than usual. We are going to be doing a free introduction to Hebrew lesson and talking about the Hebrew word for EMUNAH. I know some of you on the call are already Hebrew students. I'm going to try and throw in some new things, so it's interesting for everybody, even if you have already studied Hebrew. So thank you so much again, Susan, for your time, for your wisdom, for your heart for Israel, for all that you do for Israel and in educating the church and providing resources for us. And I hope to see all of you back here at the same time, same place next week, next Tuesday, for the free introduction to Hebrew and a look at, a deep dive really into the Hebrew word emunah. So thank you so much. Shalom.